Welcome back to Frederick Advice Givers, episode 169. I am Eric Verdi. Today I have with me almost a lifelong friend. We've known each other since probably middle school, or at least high school. Lydia, well, she used to be Wooten. I might refer to her as Lydia Wooten during the interview, but Lydia Manalo. She's with Lydia Manalo Designs, and we've recently reconnected on Facebook. She's doing wonderful things with interior design. She's getting her business up and going as a new entrepreneur, right?
Right.
About a year now?
Yes, about a year. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And Lydia's husband, is it okay to talk about Noel a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. Lydia's husband's also a good friend of ours or mine, and went to Frederick High. And he is a managing attorney at Miles and Stockbridge in downtown Frederick. Mm-hmm. So great family. So I wanted to have Lydia on to share her story.
Thanks, Eric.
So for our listeners that might not know you, that didn't go to Frederick High with us.
Right.
There might be a couple out there.
That's right.
So tell us your backstory.
Okay, I grew up in Frederick.
Mm-hmm.
I did go to West Frederick and Frederick High. Was a cheerleader, as
Right.
you reminded me a minute ago. And from there, I was an education major, and I went to Texas. I went to Fort Worth, Texas, to TCU.
Okay.
About halfway through my education degree, I realized I wanted to do interior design or fashion design.
So why? So what you didn't like education, or you like being in design better?
Actually, I had a love for fashion from a very young age.
Okay.
I would lay on the floor of my bedroom and look at 17 magazine.
Okay.
This was in middle school.
Right.
But as I got older and went into high school and then into college, I was into Vogue. I would read Vogue
Right.
religiously. And flying back and forth to Texas, I had a lot of time in airports and airplanes, and I would just sort of pour through the pages of Vogue and memorize all the designers and what they were doing, and it was really fascinating to me. And I knew I wanted to switch majors, but I was afraid to tell my mom.
Okay.
So
you finished out
I
getting your
finished
education
that,
degree?
and I finally did tell her, and her advice was to teach for 3 years, save some money, get some life experience, and if you still really wanted to do this design thing, go for it, but at least you'll have some life experience behind you and some money.
Right.
And that's what I did. I did teach for 3 years after that.
Okay. And then how did you transition into, so I'm not going to say your age, but I know there was a large gap between 3 years from college to the last year in design. So fill in that gap for me, and then how did you transition to design?
Okay. That's right. So I taught for 3 years. I decided to, actually, it's kind of a funny story. My last year of teaching, I had my full-time teaching job, but I had 4 part-time jobs on the side. I mean, it was crazy.
Were you teaching here in Maryland?
I taught in Frederick County.
Okay.
I taught middle school 1 year, and then I taught at Deer Crossing for 2 years. I taught 4th grade, loved it. The kids were amazing. I loved the kids. I just didn't have the passion for it that I did for design. And like I said, I was working 7 days a week. I saved up every penny I could. I was living at home. I just worked, and moved to Boston. There was a fashion design school there that I had heard about, that another girl from Frederick attended years before I did, and just knew that's the school I wanted to attend. So I did, and it was great. But fashion design for me, and I think looking back now, I realize that I didn't have the education to kind of ground me, and it seemed a little too nebulous. It was almost as if there weren't enough constraints with fashion for me creatively. And
so you're going any different direction.
Exactly.
Right.
It was just, now with pattern making and things, there are measurements and things like that, but it was just a little bit too open for me. And I took a semester off, actually, and switched schools, decided, okay, maybe that's not what I want to do. And interior design was always in the back of my mind, so I thought, okay, I'm going to try that. And from the place where I was living, I could throw a stone at the Boston Architectural Center.
Right.
And I went and took a class. I was terrible at my first class, quite frankly. I mean, I made an okay grade, but it was challenging.
Right.
And through that, I learned that there was a school where if you had a degree in something else, you could go and get your master's in interior design. And that was the New England School of Art and Design. And that was affiliated with Suffolk University.
Okay.
So that's where I ended up.
Very
and
cool.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah.
So
And
did you stay in Boston after school? after?
Well, it's a funny story. Noel and I ended up getting married kind of towards the end of my master's degree.
Okay.
And I got pregnant. And he was bar certified in Maryland, not in Massachusetts. And being a realtor, I'm sure you know what the market's like in Boston.
Yep.
So with the baby on the way and all of that, we were like, we better go back. And so we came back to Frederick. And I didn't work for 2 years with my first child.
Okay.
And then I went to work for Profit and Associates.
Okay.
And I was able to work there for about 4 years.
Okay.
And it was great. And
well,
had
you
some
just
wonderful
answered my next
projects.
question. So
oh,
why
sorry.
did, well, that's okay. No, so why did you choose to come back to Frederick? So it was because of Noel and being pregnant.
That's right.
Right?
That's
and
right.
Is
and
both of your families still around here?
Exactly. My mom is still here. I don't know if you remember. She was the vice principal of our school, but yeah, she's still here, and she still was working and had a vibrant career, and so was able to help when she could. And now she's able to help a lot more, thank goodness.
Is your mom still working?
She does. Retired? She works at Hood now. She's a teacher at Hood. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Full time?
No, part time.
Okay. Yeah, my wife was teaching a master's class, I guess, in literacy or reading at Hood for a few years.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and on top of her, she's a full-time teacher in the school system too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
Great.
Very busy. All right, so the next 2 questions are meant to bring you back to a personal level. Okay. So what's the last purchase that you splurged on for yourself or your family?
Okay, that's easy.
Okay.
All of our money goes to the education of our kids, really. I mean, I mentioned to you, I was actually homeschooling.
Okay.
So I worked at Profit. After that, I started homeschooling for several years and realized I just couldn't do that anymore. And we put our kids in private school. And so literally...
Even with a mom in public education?
I know. But Noel, I don't know if you know this, he's quite devout. He's Catholic and quite devout in his faith, and he wanted them to go to a private school.
Okay.
So that's where our money goes, to their education, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I'd love a new car, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
So you have 4 kids, right?
We have 4. Mm-hmm.
3 girls and a boy.
That's right.
And what are their ages?
So our oldest is Cecilia, she's 14.
Okay.
Phoebe, who's 11.
Okay.
Henry, who is 7. And then Olive is 4. So poor Henry, he's outnumbered by all these girls.
He's got some big sisters and one little sister to look after. So
That's right.
Are all your days taken with, I mean, I've got 2. And like, I don't know if your kids do any extracurricular activities. Mine both play kind of sports and do. Anthony's actually in all-county chorus, which I'm very proud of also. Mm-hmm. Like tonight, we had 2 nights of sports leading up to tonight. And tonight he's at West Frederick from 6 to 8:30 doing practice for all-county chorus. So much of my time on the side, outside of doing this, is taken up with my kids. What's your outside of work look like?
It is. It's a lot of driving around. It's a lot of waiting in lines for pickup and drop off. Our kids are busy. My oldest 2 take piano, and they're really busy with that. But in the past, I have definitely done the ballet, gymnastics, and all of that. Running around an activity. So
you mentioned in your driving around and in your waiting, you're listening to podcasts? Is that what you do? Or you follow entrepreneurs on social media?
I do. So driving around, I mostly listen to the radio.
Okay.
But I do follow some speakers online and on social media, and it does help me kind of motivate for what I do every day.
Right. Cool. So Lydia, what hobby or interest could you spend hours doing outside of work?
I love music.
Okay.
I love listening to music. Walking, I love to walk, and I work out. I lift weights, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I know you might
not very heavy weights.
No. But my trainer says you have to lift heavy, or you won't see results. So heavy for me.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay. Awesome. I love it. All right. So being an entrepreneur and a business owner, you went from Profit Associates to Lydia Manalo Interior Designs.
That's right.
Interior Designs in the last year. What's that internal drive, because you're not working a 9 to 5? right? You don't have to go, you're not going to get a steady paycheck like people do in education or other fields. You are a true entrepreneur. So what's that internal drive? What keeps you motivated? What keeps you going?
Really, it's the passion and the love I have for interior design and for art and for creativity. It keeps me going. It's what sort of is the spark within. When I wasn't working, it was obvious in my personal life and how I was dealing with it. I was not dealing with it very well. I had gotten myself into a very dark place, quite frankly, and knew that I needed to be working again in order to be fulfilled. And that's really the drive that gets me up and gets me going every day. And I just want to be the best I can be every day.
So, who is your client? Who is your ideal client? So I have a house and I'm thinking about redoing my floors or painting a wall or moving furniture. Like, what do you do, and who is your client?
Okay.
Or who is your ideal client?
My clients tend to be, I tend to be more of a higher end interior designer.
Okay.
And also quasi-commercial. So the Lancasters approached me a year ago to redesign their offices, and one of the spaces in their office is almost like a living room, and then there's a conference room which is almost like a dining room, and then Judy, who is the wife of Mark Lancaster, had an office upstairs that she wanted to have sort of a cozy area in her office, so we designed that as well. And that was such an interesting project because it was sort of quasi-commercial. We also designed a bathroom in that interior. But clients like that, and then clients, I ended up working in their home on a project. And then this little staging project we worked on recently, which was completely different and outside the scope of what I normally do and how I normally work. But when I do have a client, I go to DC and I work from the DC Design Center.
Okay.
So it's more of a higher end sort of clientele.
So when we wanted a room redesigned or an office redesigned, so I'm trying to understand the process.
Sure.
Okay, because staging is different than design.
Sure.
It's two different industries, and I'm very familiar with staging from the real estate world. So I understand staging. We have to position everything because we want to make the photos pop and everything. You have one central focus on each room, and Sherry's taught me that over the years.
Sure.
But for interior design, you've got a room or a blank canvas. How do I see your vision? Is it a 3D tour? Is it like how do
I present it?
Yeah,
to you?
yeah. How do I see your vision?
Sure.
So my wife and I have this room and we want to redesign. Like how do we see what you want to do?
Well, initially, when I have an initial consult with a client, I'll want to know how are they going to be using the space? What are you going to be doing in that space? And then I'll come up with a floor plan and a furniture plan, and I'll come up with fabrics and textures and accessories and present those things to you.
Okay.
It would be ideally 2 to 3 different scenarios for you to choose from.
Okay.
But that's how you would normally see it, through the floor plan, through some drawings, and through discussion. And I like to work, my sort of aesthetic is more of a modern mix. I like to mix antiques and more contemporary things. So for me, you get kind of like a mix of things.
Okay.
A little bit eclectic, like for example that mirror, a little bit eclectic, a little bit different.
Okay, cool. So having been an entrepreneur and in business for a year, I'm sure there are some things that you've learned this year that maybe you wouldn't do if you were starting over and could roll back the clock a year. So what's maybe either the one or the biggest thing you've learned this year that if you could have the reset button, you would redo differently?
I think some things require a lot of forethought that I possibly was pretty
naive.
Yeah, naive. It was the first time I had ever taken orders, and I had ever taken money, and I had ever kept track of large sums of money. And I was lucky in that my client was excellent with record keeping and bookkeeping, and she was kind of doing it on the back end.
Right.
But I was kind of doing Lydia Manalo style, which is just like, give me, and I'll take this and then we'll, subtract it and everything. And it all worked out perfectly.
Right.
But in hindsight, I would be more organized in how I was taking orders and how I was approaching that part of it. It was that part of it. Give me all the creative things and I'll do all of that, and that's the part I love, and the big picture things, and it's the little details that kind of, for me, I find that I need to probably step up my game and work on a little bit.
Gotcha. All right, Lydia, so in the last 3 years, what's a choice you've made or a pivotal moment that's led you to where you are today and starting your design company?
I think the choice was really to put our children in school. I was homeschooling, as I mentioned. And
so were you homeschooling when you were at Profit?
No, I stopped working in Profit at 2009.
Okay.
And I homeschooled, though, until 2016.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
it was a long time.
Okay.
And it was kind of nice, though, in a way. I had come off a huge project with Profit, which was the bed and breakfast in Boonesboro then for Nora Roberts, which was a great project, but it was quite intense. It was a 2-year-long project. The building burned in the middle of it, completely burned down.
Right.
It was quite an experience. So the time off was sort of nice in a way, and I was able to develop my own aesthetic during that time through social media, quite frankly. And it just, as I used to do with the fashion magazines, I was doing with Instagram and Facebook.
Swipe.
Exactly. Right. And just sort of filtering my own, filtering images and then sort of manifesting my own aesthetic through that. And so the choice to no longer homeschool, to put the kids into school, in order for me to have a business was the most pivotal decision I've made, probably in the last 14 years.
Gotcha. All right, so Lydia, I have sat across the microphone from 168 other entrepreneurs and business owners, and I love interacting and learning by asking questions. I take a nugget out of each interview that I try to either better myself or better my business or better relationships, whatever. So you and I have known each other for too long now, so keep this above board. So I want to flip the script and have you ask me a question.
Okay. I've looked at some of the things you've been doing, which I think are so exciting, and I would love to know about your writing.
Okay.
And when did you develop a love for writing?
So it's not necessarily a love for writing. It's a way to get feelings out there, get emotions out there. Like in high school, so it starts from reading. It starts from consuming content. So it's content in, content out, content in, content out, content in, content out. The more content you consume, the more you can put out. About 6-7 years ago, I had a boilerplate cookie cutter newsletter that I sent out to my audience, my sphere, that I didn't write any of it. And then a friend of mine, Ryan Fletcher, said, you're going to start writing a newsletter. So, well, I don't know how to write. So then I bought all these books on copywriting. I read 50 or 60 books on copywriting. And although what we teach is not copywriting, it's more story writing. You convey messages through stories. So I always say I'm never selling, I'm just telling stories. Okay, so I'm not a big salesperson. I'd much rather you connect with me through something that I wrote or talked about. Before we started the podcast and did interviews, this would freak me out, talking in front of a camera and with another person. Although one-to-one conversations are great, when I'm at a party, I'm the person in the corner. Okay, if I'm at a party where I know half of the people or not half the people, I'm the guy in the corner. I'm very introverted. So writing was my way to express my feelings in a different light. And from that, I've kind of fine-tuned over the last 6 years the process, and what has to be done is kind of formulaic. You have you as your character and who you are and what you stand for. Then you have your audience, and people are going to do business with people that they know, like, and trust.
Right.
So if you can connect, inspire. So my know, like, and trust is connect, inspire, and influence. So you connect through written word, you inspire through stories of other case studies of people that you've helped, and then you influence by having your audience be your number one source of new business. So that's really how outside of this, how my business has evolved, where my past clients, so people in my audience, are delivering new clients to me because I connect and I inspire and influence through my content.
Great.
So, yeah, good question.
Yeah, well, it's really inspiring.
Well, thank you.
So, good
Thank
job.
you. I appreciate it. So, now we go back a little bit more personal here. So what failure or loss or challenge has helped turn you into the person that you are today?
Well, I could go in a couple different directions with that question, but
there had to be some sort of pivotal moment. There had to be some sort of, I've had people on the podcast that have lost young kids, quite frankly, and we sat there and we cried. And I've had people that got their car repossessed or whatever it was, more material. So whatever you're comfortable sharing, we all kind of have those places in our lives where
definitely. So I don't know if you know this, but when we were in ninth, well, you weren't in ninth grade with me, but when I was in ninth grade, my stepfather died.
Okay.
And he was an educator in Frederick as well, and he died of cancer. So it was just my mom and I through high school and most of college.
Right.
And that was, of course, very challenging. My mom was completely distraught over that, and I didn't, as she was there for me, but it was just very grief-stricken, and I got to see her heal over time and become strong. And I think that sometimes when we are broken by things, it only makes us stronger in the end. And
was it a long battle?
It was about a 2-year battle. It really was. And he was quite athletic.
Okay.
He had been captain of the WVU basketball team in his day, and he was quite big, and it was disturbing to see him so frail.
Right.
And but it was really watching my mom and watching her evolve through the process to where she is today. And she's married to a wonderful man, my stepfather today, and I think came out stronger and more of a centered person from the whole thing. And so it gave me strength to see her and to know that you can be in a bad place in life, but it'll only make you stronger in the end.
Do you have any siblings?
I have a brother. He's 6 years older than I am, so he actually wasn't.
So he wasn't around.
Exactly. It was just my mom and I.
So it was you and your mom going through that together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I imagine it's probably, you're obviously close to your parents, your mom especially, and most everybody is to a certain level. But I imagine going through a time like that with your mom, there's got to be some special bond, going through that grief together.
Definitely. We had to just bond together like girlfriends,
right?
Quite frankly, through it.
Right.
And it just had to be just a super strong bond
right.
to get us through it, and still continues today. I don't spend as much time with her as I'd like because of the 4 kids.
Right.
But know that that's an important thing to do, and love her and appreciate everything that she
help
does
out with
for
the
me.
grandkids at all?
Yeah, she does.
Awesome.
I appreciate all of her help. So
awesome. All right, so let's end on a lighter note.
Okay.
So Lydia, where do you see yourself in 3 years and then in 10 years?
Okay. In 3 years, I would like to just have my business have grown some.
Okay.
I would love to have, I do still subcontract through Profit and Associates, so I have a little office space there now, which is nice.
Okay.
But I'd love to have an office space downtown that I can call home base. And interior designers come with a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And there are fabric books and furniture books and lighting books.
Right.
And it's kind of nice. I have a little office at home, but it's a disaster. So it would be nice to have a space to put everything. That would be my next goal. And in 10 years, I'd also like to have been able to travel.
Okay.
For people that are more artistic, I think it's so important to travel. And we were talking a little bit earlier about having a warehouse full of things. Mm-hmm. That's my goal, quite frankly. In the design, the type of design I do, it's important to have pieces that are interesting, at least one in every room.
Right.
Something that's really unique. And I'd love to travel to France, to the Paris flea markets, and to London flea markets, and even locally in Massachusetts, the Brimfield market, to source things, pieces, artwork, rugs that are unique, and I'd love to warehouse them, and that's where I'd like to be in 10 years.
Awesome.
Just a little more grounded.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so before we finish, let's give a shout out to where we are, what project this is, who the builder is, to kind of help Mr. Lancaster out too.
No, definitely. So Lancaster Craftsman Homes started their business in 1984. And I'm sure you know, but it's a custom home building company. And it's of the highest quality as far as I'm concerned, and what I've seen them do. And they employ, through their subcontractors, they employ hundreds of county workers. And this project, this is on a 7-lot cul-de-sac subdivision that they are developing. This house is their Pebble Beach home, and we staged it recently, and it was a completely different way of working for me. It was great.
Right.
It was a different experience. And that's where we are today. We're in the Pebble Beach, and if you're interested in coming to see it, Charles Jenkins is here 11 to 6 every Saturday. So
we're the Copper Oaks 2 subdivision, just outside of Woodsboro, right? It looks like they've got one model here, another 1 or 2 under construction.
This one I think will be delivered in the spring.
Okay, perfect. So if you're looking for a house and want a custom home, come out to Copper Oaks.
That's right.
All right, so tell our listeners, viewers, how they would get a hold of you, find you on the interweb.
Sure.
Learn more about you.
Okay. So it's Lydia Manalo, Interior Design. I have a Facebook page for the business. I also have a personal page, which I'm glad I've sort of re-upped recently. And then you can find me on Instagram at Lydia_Manalo.
Awesome. Listeners, viewers, I hope you enjoyed meeting Lydia as much as I did. I've known her throughout the years. Lydia Manalo, episode 169 for the advice givers. Lydia Manalo Interior Design.
That's right.
Check her out. And we are out.